This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts, Alpha-Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. You know, we're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world. Hey everyone, are you ready to grow your own fresh, delicious vegetables, herbs, and flowers this season? If you're looking for the highest quality heirloom and organic seeds, I've got the perfect company for you, True Leaf Market. They've been a trusted seed company since 1974, offering 3,000 types of non-GMO varieties, everything from classic heirloom tomatoes and peppers to rare herbs, microgreens, sprouting seeds, and beautiful flowers. All those seeds are open pollinated, pure, and perfect for home gardeners or anyone wanting healthy, flavorful produce without chemicals. What I love the most is their huge selection, fast shipping guarantees, plus options for bulk if you're going big. If you're excited to start your garden this year with real, authentic heirloom and organic seeds, click the link in the description box below to check out TrueLeafMarket.com. You won't regret it. Happy planting, and thank you for supporting the channel and this broadcast.
Please remember to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. And thank you for all the support.
And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet. Another day to celebrate breath and life. Well, as you can see, the world's changed. You can think back through significant events where things change and how does it affect your life or mine or just the world in general moving forward. You can look at this time and we have really, you and I, we have no control over what's going on. So you can adjust to the events. You can look forward around to see, all right, there's some things in motion already because of what's happening that you can adjust for. But just sit around and chew your fingers down to the nails, down to the quick, and just sit there and gravitate on that. Not good. If you're going to be using that type of energy, you want to be in motion. So tonight's broadcast is pretty much about the economic sphere of everything going on. You can watch those whiz bang videos and everything blowing up and whatever. Good. You can jump over there. That's not tonight's show. Tonight's show is just about a little preparedness. We've been talking about Ransom and myself for years now, preparing for originally what we thought was COVID was the big one that was going to be here. That put a lot of people in motion and triggered a lot of alarm bells for people in their minds. Well, we thought it was over for a minute. There's a lot of forecasters that were calling that there was going to be some conflict in the Middle East. And now it's manifesting. Okay, so you could stay on that and be like, oh no, everything's happening. Or, like I say, to look to see where it might go. And if we're going to come into a hyperinflation event, might be a good way to make some money real quick. Not financial advice. Shouldn't be listening to some dude on YouTube or on some streaming platform talking about this. I've been collating information around through the last, say, 4 days. I've been not hesitant, but trying to put in a logical fashion all the economic pingbacks that are happening and things that we might get ready for here. And then I'm going to try to release that video tomorrow. It's a little bit longer one. But my whole thing is not about what place got destroyed. It's about what good service or I guess shipping and everything in between, finance, transport, all these things was destroyed. It's not about the thing. Okay, an oil platform to say, okay, a pipeline got destroyed. Okay, it's not about that. Where's that pipeline going? And have we been through this before? Yes, we have. We have quite a few times in history when we see that oil's and energy is being cut off. Well, that's only one thing. And it is what it is, like 30% of the world's oil. And until something gets better, it's going to be trimmed. What's not talked about is the food going into what is called the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, the GCC Council or the GCC countries. That's like Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, which, by the way, before we even starts tonight, little geography on this one. You hear the UAE and you hear of Dubai and you hear Abu Dhabi. Well, there's 7 of the Emirates in United Arab Emirates, kind of like the United States. So think about each one of the Emirates, like Dubai is a state. Think of it that way. So Dubai is a different emirate and Abu Dhabi is a different emirate. So it's a different state within the whole. So we have 7 of those. So think about them, 7 states within the UAE there. So there's 7 of those. How are they going to be affected? What do they offer the rest of the world? Oh, Amazon data centers. Okay, well, those are being heavily targeted right now. So what happens if our cables and the web services, the hosting cloud, these type of things are being more pressure on them? Okay, so then follow that back. Well, how's that going to affect us? Problem is going into the Gulf countries, 80% of their food plus goes in there. We're worried about the oil coming out because we're just in the West over here going, precious oil, gas, we need it, fertilizer, we need it. Oh yeah, that's getting cut off too. But what's not widely talked about is the food that they need with the freshwater needs going into those GCC nations. Saudi Arabia is one of those nations. So what happens when their food runs out or gets cut off? See, that's the whole thing. Iran's going to be starving these people out. Think about it, but just a modern day siege. We're just looking at larger castles, basically. These countries, they're just big castles with not so high walls. It's the exact same thing that's been done through history. It's not like a brand new thing that just popped out yesterday. Like, hey, we're going to cut off the food and water. It's been done for millennia. So what happens? Say they're being punished. So again, the words to be used are super important with this one. They're not being attacked. They're being punished for choosing the wrong side. They're being punished for going with America. They're being punished for not following the adepts of the Quran. This is the way that it's being phrased from the Iranian, mouthpieces, for a better term. And this whole thing about empires and this and that, there's so much lexicon floating around. So just bring it back into, it's a simple country. It's without these monikers on top of it. But they were very clean. The infinite money glitch from those GCC countries of purchasing that. See, they sell us oil and gas and we purchase it, and then we give them a bunch of treasury bonds and US dollars. They in turn throw that into our stock market. And then it makes everything go up. So when that infinite money loop stops, there's going to be quite a few things that are going to, go bump in the night. So that's one thing you start to go, all right, well, if that's going to happen, then how could you protect yourself? And not really out of a fear-based thing, just, all right, I'm looking at my bank account. They're already hinting at some sort of, I'm not going to say bank run, but some sort of more control over the money's coming in and out of banks. Whatever form that takes, I don't know. But anyway, we're here to talk about it tonight, and it's going to be an interesting episode. Again, this is not a fear-based episode. This is a episode to try to frame it correctly so we can get ready for these changes, because they're so far in motion right now, it's going to be hard to pull them back. Even if this whole thing were to stop like by tomorrow, Friday, which is not, it's going to roll through the weekend. It's going to be week 2. It's so far in motion that they're now there's scenarios going out through different weeks on how long this prolongs itself. Like the food not going in 3 weeks, they starve to death, or they fight each other for food down to the last morsel. They're going to be eating rats in the streets. 3 weeks, GCC nations. They're starting to hit some of the desal plants now, or desalinization plants. So it cuts off their water. Now, these places are just flat deserts with a lot of money coming in. And they have all the goodies because they can get the tech to get the goodies. But when the tech's broken and your money supply stops, you got flat sand again. So this is going to be a real interesting one to see, like, walk it back also with the food shortages. Like, how would that affect? You're going to see in real time how a food shortage, like the one that occurred over in Egypt that started the Arab Spring, that was at one country, and all they did was talk about wheat prices rising. You see a bunch of angry people fighting for, like, the flatbread wheats and stuff. Okay. But you're going to watch like 7 or 8 nations starve at the same time if the food doesn't come in and things don't get reopened. And please hit us up tonight. Super chats, yes, as well as buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. Got some supporters already. Thank you, Murphy Duck. 3 double espressos. Always love your work. Well, I always love that people are joining the conversation. So thank you for being here. Peter T, cheers. Bought us a double espresso. Well, cheers back to you. Hopefully it's going to be well worth your time. Listen tonight. Someone bought us 3 double espressos. Thanks for the conversation. We're going to go deep, but stay hopeful on this one tonight. David Campbell bought 5 double espressos. Thank you for all you do. Ransom David, well, thank you for being here. And someone bought 3 double espresso. Yeah, here we are. Fruit tree pruning and dormant oil application. Wearing short sleeves this week. Zone 6 weather is changing. Us today, 80 degrees. Last few days, I've been trimming like a man, like Edward Scissorhands. Out in the orchard ourselves. I got to do my applications. Well, I'm going to do copper and neem oil. Copper is for the fungicide, all natural. I don't like to use any chemical really if I don't have to. The Japanese beetle grubs, I try to hit them though. I do use some malathion once a year to try to kit those things back, but I use a light application. Everything else is pretty much organic out here. Any types of chemicals, I don't really like to use nitrogenous fertilizers. Try to get more composty type things, using our own leaf humus, wood humuses, different kind of mushroom compost and things for the trees. But also the algae and this sort of thing to try to bring it up. But anyway, thank you so much so far for the support over on buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. Now, with that being said, for that ramble there, That's the intro to the show. Thanks for joining, Ransom. I know it's going to be an interesting one tonight. But again, we're trying to keep it on a hopeful note here, just because you can find all the doom and gloom you want. You really
I'm
can.
good
I mean,
at
just
it.
go search. You're going to find a billion bucketfuls. But this is what analysis and analysts do. If you're talking about consultants and analysts, they don't go into the fear. They just call out the facts and they say, this could happen. This might happen. Prepare over here, prepare over there. So look at it as we're just two analysts coming in tonight to at least show you what we have found.
Well, you know what's funny about this is I don't know what the show's title was. I mean, we do one every Thursday for several years now, but we did talk about one time on a show. I remember the maps changing, how that this was going to happen in the Middle East, and this was last year, even the year before. I'm not even sure, but how the empire, whatever empire through you go out through time, has to be located specifically where our strategic ally is in the Middle East. And you have to have that spot because that is the route. That's all roads, out of Rome there, basically. Um, and we talked about like from one end to the other, from China, India, Pakistan, all the way over. And we showed and on another show, I remember we just showed the up northern latitude above the equatorial belt, which is basically the stretch that will be World War III. And that starts right in the Mediterranean and it ends in Taiwan. And if you just draw a line from Taiwan all the way through over there, you see where all the battles are going to happen, or the disagreements are going to happen, where all the pipelines, trains, and trade routes go from the Strait of Hormuz to the, and we predicted all of that. I mean, not because we're Nostradamus, but because it's obvious if you look at it from the point of view of empire. Empire, you need that to happen. And what we've been seeing right now is just a manifestation of exactly that. We were talking a lot about the maps changing, and I kind of wanted to get into that because all of this directly relates to how much food you get. So fuel equals food, because in order to have food delivered anywhere in the world from other countries, you're going to have fuel. And so the higher the fuel prices or the unavailability of the trade routes to get said fuel anywhere cuts off the world from different products. Even if you're landlocked, you still need trains, planes, and automobiles to get your products where they're going. And, it's really surprising. And we were talking about this before the show, that they don't have a bunch of, Greenpeace, Save the World, anti-global warming, anti-CO2, fanatics out there right now. Imagine all of the pollutants that are now in the ocean from Egypt all the way around the Arabian Peninsula to the Strait of Hormuz, where there's just going to be thousands and thousands of gallons of toxic material from sunk ships, oil leaks, bombs, you name it. You can just go on and on. So good luck fishing anywhere around there for the next decade. And then you were talking also about, what's getting bombed? Well, if you just go back and look at Iraq, one of the first things that Bill Clinton did before we even invaded Iraq was 10 years of destabilizing bombs. And we targeted water filtration, desalination plants, date plants, baby food factories, the list goes on. And so once all of the infrastructure was completely smashed, then we were able to roll in. And talking about timetables, if you've been paying attention like I do, it's not because I'm doom scrolling. I'm just getting updated, like you said, and I want to analyze what's going on. But it's all pretty much written in the book, so to speak, about how things will roll out as far as the public propaganda end of why, how, and all of that. But on the back end, it's just completely strategic business empire planning and warfare. Because we are going into the next generation. This reset will put us into a new system, and everybody's got to get reorganized. Right now, you got Japan and China and other places really worried that they're not going to get the petroleum delivered on time so that their industries can run the way that they want. Now, right now, I think oil's only about $79 a barrel, last I checked, or 80 maybe. Again, I think it went back down. But we talked about all of this remapping of the world. It happens over and over again. And each time it seems a little more incremental in between times. So you have World War I, you have World War II, barely 20 years apart, if that. And, from then we've had a continuous, what analysts actually call World War III, which was the Cold War and the reorganization of powers from the Middle East all the way around the world. It's developing into the plan. There's all of these groups and, papers they write for years. You got the Trilateral Commission I like to specifically talk about, and the PNAC, the Project for a New American Century. And you're seeing those exact plans rolled out in real time right now. And it's funny that, you're not supposed to mention neocons, but if you go back and read the neocons Project for a New American Century about 2000, you'll find out that we're right on course. There's really nothing that's, shocking about what's going on. It's exactly as planned. And I'll show you that on the map here in a little bit. I see your stuff, but let me turn you on.
I got to turn myself back here. All right. I am just looking at what you
There you
talked
go.
about. There's a website called oilprice.com, which we're on right now. And what I like about it is you can actually go through the different areas that are being sold, So I'm going to focus in on the Middle East here, obviously, because that's where basically OPEC is. I understand it's not exactly there. You did have Venezuela, but you can see the Morban crude, that's at $94.51. So what we're getting for different pricing around the world currently also is going to be a little bit different. So if you look at the Arab Light, $80, Kuwait, 84, and as you move around through UAE at 87 or $88 a barrel, Qatar 87. Oh, the condensate is a little bit different than the oil itself. Iraq, Basra heavy, a lot of sulfur in that. The same with Caspian Sea type thing. Arab extra light, so 81. So they're even, an arbitrage there, $6 difference for a barrel, just depending on which country, even in the Middle East, you're getting it from. So when you start to look at the crude comparison, literally, this is going to be the thing to compare. And what's so interesting is we are talking blue in the face about how much we're destroying. We're doing this, we're doing that. But look, they're still exporting oil. Look at that.
Right.
Iran Light today is $79 a barrel, deliveries to Northwest Europe. Now, they would definitely be showing you if there was a disruption, but notice the price is like 14-15% up here. So these prices are delayed one day because I'm not on the subscription service here. But it seems that Iran is still pumping oil, even though all these hostilities are happening. And I wonder, would you not try to take out their energy infrastructure first if it was truly this all knockout, drag out, got to end everything, battle to the end, like Highlander, there shall be only one? Why are they letting the oil still flow? That's an honest question, really.
Well, we don't want to rebuild it.
We don't want to rebuild it. We just want to go in and capture it, just like we did in Iraq. Oh, I shouldn't have said weapons of mass destruction. And I want to say something too. I was reading a real interesting article on the Sunday. The Iranians had ordered these Mount Blanc pens, and from Mount Blanc you can find this news release because these pens were $600 each. And they were so proud that these new pens for the year were going to be used in the signing ceremony for the Iranians to sign off and say, we do not want to refine uranium. If you give it to us, you can come in. We'll not enrich anything else. Remember, our uranium enrichment's been obliterated. And they were ready to sign. And the very next day, then we attacked them. But the whole thing was the Mount Blanc pens gave it away, that they already had these pens. There were 16 of them at $600 each that were going to be on the tables for the signing of the Iranians to say, we don't, and we won't enrich uranium. Okay, we take your deal. But then they attacked them anyway. So then they're not attacking any of this oil infrastructure, but Iran is taking the fight over to the most needed parts of these other GCC countries. Like they cut off the oil, or the natural gas pipeline going up to Europe. So there's no more natural gas coming out of Qatar going to Europe. That is gone. So as you look through some of these prices tonight, and let me switch you one last one here. Since you were talking about resources, I got you this one here. Okay, so Asia's energy crunch is spreading fast. Straits of Hormuz, Taiwan, for example, imports 33, or it was 34% actually, 34% of its daily usage to run through the refineries and whatnot from the Middle East. 34%. They've actually they saw something coming. So a couple of years ago, they decided to take a different, import route from other suppliers around, mainly United States now. For that, what was the Middle East, they swapped out and they're getting it from the U.S. All right, Singapore bunker hubs cut supply. This is a hugie. Singapore is not getting their fuel. China halted diesel and gasoline exports. Okay, so those countries friendly with China that were getting refined product out, cut off. So then you got to go, whoa, who's the biggest exporter or who's the biggest importers of gasoline? Oh, Hong Kong. These kind of things, you just go further out and see who they're with. Kazakhstan. These kind of countries that you're not really hearing very much about, suddenly they got completely cut off from Chinese exports. So this is going to ripple everywhere. Now, South Korea, their stock market crashed. A circuit breaker at 8%, and then it dropped 10%. Their whole stock market went down about 22% in one day, and then it started to bounce back up. They are completely without a hope there. They can't get the raw materials in for any of their chip production. They can't get any materials in for any of the industries that they have going there, including shipbuilding. They need the NAFTA force majeure. They're not delivering to anybody onward because those that buy from South Korea NAFTA force majeure, you're not getting any zero. The knock-on effects as well. I haven't done the research to see who is like the number one importer of South Korean naphtha. So see, this is where the research comes in, and knock that down. Use Grok and say, okay, top 5 South Korean importers of naphtha. And then you just list those out and go, okay, well, that would have a knock-on effect, and see which industries are used and what part of the percentage of the stock market it is of those companies using naphtha that's imported from South Korea. And they're usually going to be a little bit smaller nations, and then you can see the detrimental effects it'll have on their markets as well. So this is not just like big nations getting affected. This is going to be everywhere above and below the fold. Japan, 90% Middle East crude. I did a little research on Japan, and within 60 days, Japan runs out of crude oil. 60s, 2 months. If this thing goes on 2 months, Japan has no more fuel because they're so heavily reliant on that. Even though they're tapping, and so is Taiwan, starting to tap their strategic petroleum reserve. Taiwan's a little better off. They can last 90 days if there's a complete cutoff of Middle Eastern oil, because they're only getting 34%, but Japan has a much higher percentage coming in from the Middle East than, for example, Taiwan does. So already it's starting to ripple through everywhere. It's not going to be a small thing. This is going to take a long time to unwind, even if it were to just, I guess, stop tomorrow. There's still all these bottlenecks and contracts and these sort of things. So where does it go from here? I see you typing, Ransom. Were you trying to?
Yeah, somebody in the chat asked, how many gallons of gas do you get out of a barrel of crude oil? So I looked that up, and I guess it's about 19 to 20 gallons per barrel for your automotive needs. So
depending on the type of crude. That's why this heavy sour crude gets a way big discount, like the stuff coming out of the Caspian Sea Basin, because they got to take the sulfur out of it first, cause it takes an extra process, but that sulfur is also removing volume out of that barrel of oil. So you're not going to get the same amount with heavy sour crude as you would with like Boni Light or Arab Light or something. By the way, the only reason I know a lot about oils, because back in the day, I was doing some analysis for people in my previous life about peak oil, and I knew a lot of the oil fields, and watching production at that level too wasn't scary. It's just like, all right, a lot of these fields have reached their max production, and from this point, it's going to roll over. And you could the predicted rollover point for peak production oil wise on our planet, if you believe there's no manipulation of production. And there's abiotic oil theory also, that the Earth replenishes oil itself. That's a natural process of lubrication of a substance that's created through high pressures deeper in our Earth with limestone, and we get oil. And then as it flows from beneath, It goes out to those oil fields, but that's like a root at the end of a tree. Like if you have a tree trunk or the end of a branch, you'd have an oil field. But the main trunk, that's what they're trying to tap into in the Gulf of Mexico when they had the blowout. What was that big oil rig that went down? BP. It was on. It
Exxon.
was on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then it had oil spill and all the Corexit and everything that occurred from that.
Right.
They were trying to come in sideways through a salt dome versus vertical punch because they already knew the vertical punch was going to be way too much pressure. They were literally trying to get into a primary oil source out in the Gulf. So they came in kilometers away sideways, thinking that they could beat this pressure differential, but they sure didn't. It blew out the rig, and they had all the problems associated with that. Oil could refill itself. Now, if it does, okay, but at that time, conventional wisdom was saying a certain rate of production will deplete your oil field or your oil wells at a certain rate, depending on how many barrels you pull out on proven reserves. And I was super deep into that, got paid to do all the research. And that was a previous life of mine way back in the day. And it just got weird at the end. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So anyway, the different types of oil give you different products coming out. Like that heavy sour crude is going to give you way more of like the bitumen and that carbon black and that heavier stuff at the bottom, which is its own self is a huge product stream. Like carbon black, that's a huge carbon. It's a huge stream. So some of these oils are bent and made for other industries, knowing that you can't refine as much gas out of it. So what about all the different types of heavies that are coming out for like asphalt? That would be like a Caspian Sea bingo card there. They're not going to use like Arab Light, where you're getting the highest, and Nigeria has some of the craziest high, like the viscosity on that's just like pouring out water, That stuff coming out of the heavy sour crude is like really drip, like, ooh, like goggling out really like in clumps, So there's different purposes for these different oils based on the byproduct, what they're getting for different industries. So it's not one barrel of oil equals, and it's not equal for all anyway. It's a very specialized. Yeah, there you go. Motor gasoline, 19 to 20. Yeah, and by the way, there are jet fuel for those of you flying. There's already jet fuel shortages starting to sweep the planet. Just for FYI, there.
That's all right, because nobody's wanting to fly anywhere right now. Anyway,
you sure?
Well, that's what they're
Dubai is
saying.
hot on the real estate. I was going to say it last week in the show, but I was like a little hesitant to, and I was going to say, is Dubai the new Kiev for real estate? And why would I say that? Because when I was traveling a lot earlier, this is probably like 5-6 years ago before the war started, everybody's like, dude, you got to go to Kiev, man. It's the happening spot. Get an apartment there. Get a condo, man. It's the happening spot. You got to get there. You got Ukraine, man. It's a secret spot, dude. You got to go. And then suddenly everybody who was there like that, like it is Dubai, was all investing over in Kiev, and a bunch of foreigners in Kiev. And now same thing, like Dubai, a lot of foreigners are leaving, and it's just getting pelted with things. Like the reputation is going to take for a minute to come back, not going to be like tomorrow. People are going to flock back.
Right. This is, look how clogged this thing is. I turned it off on accident.
No, that's right. Hormuz, please jump back on. Yeah.
So look, this is a lot of ships. They're just backed up all the way over here in Kuwait. You see them all just waiting. Everybody's scared to go around this bend right here, right at the United Arab Emirates and Dubai right there. But you see these piles out here? The only real people that are getting through right now are mostly Chinese.
Chinese ships. They made the agreement today. All Chinese vessels are free sail through there.
Yeah, but look at this pile up back here.
Just going to continue to pile. Eventually, they're just going to tell the boats don't even go. Like just
look at it.
Yeah. The entire supply chain of the world is completely disrupted. All of the energy, like every tanker, like they'll say, even if you got it, that they stop tomorrow, to unwind that is going to take months. Because all the backups, you don't load a 2 million barrel super tanker in like a day.
Right.
You realize the volumes of some of these ships that are moving things around the planet. 2 million barrels in a single ship. That's a crazy. That's so outside. You're like 2 million.
Well, here it is. This is the basically, like if I zoom in right here, on land, you see all those ships. That's mostly how everything's getting everywhere to begin with. But this whole area right here up on land is where we're going to be having all the problems right here, from Taiwan all the way over to here. And that's because everybody is, starting to fight over who gets what and how it gets there all through this area. And
Oh,
what's
wait, no,
funny,
Ransom, please leave the map right there. Could I make a comment about the pipeline that was just completed through Turkmenistan and Tajikistan over through
Mhm.
Kashgar and off into Western China? If you wanted to disrupt China's oil, because here's the thing, once that pipeline was going, they weren't going to rely on ships as much anymore, that completed pipeline. That was an overland route all the way to China. It came in, punched in through Xinjiang over in Western China. So that went live, and magically we got a war starting. So I wonder if those two are related because it went through Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, see where Urumqi is. That's the what you consider like Xinjiang, Urumqi. It's the
right?
capital there. And if you go out to the west, there's a place called Kashgar. It's like going back in like to the 4th century, like camel and kind of bazaars. Like when I say bazaar, not bizarre strange, but I mean like an Arab bazaar right there at Kyrgyzstan border. This place called Kashgar. It's wild, blow your mind, man. You're stepping back, 1,600 years in the past. Awesome place. That's Xinjiang. And that pipeline system runs through there and then it goes over into China. And then they get there. See, that was the whole magic key because Turkmenistan didn't have that pipeline section finished and they just finished it. So Iran could pump direct oil to China and the war starts. So for me, I think those two are a little bit related. I'm just going to put it out there for those who are willing to listen.
Right. Yeah. And then, we got stuff like this, which me personally, if I was a Kurd, I'd never believe any government ever again. I mean, if you know anything about their history, they make a lot of deals and all the countries always burn them, from the United States, Turkey, Iran, Iraq. They all burn them. They always get burned. But it's looking like I said last week, that there may be, a little bit of cutout of a new nation popping up there, which will throw everything else into chaos. And, they already got it planned out right here. Here's the Great Kurdistan, Kurdish nationalist claim. So this one's a lot bigger than what most analysts think, but they do think this is going to happen. And if you see, there's Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Russia, Turkey, all of that stuff right next to this. And then, of course, we're having the war in Iran. So it's going to probably look something more like this. Let me zoom that in. And I want you to notice something about this map. You see all this area in the white, right? That's Iraq, a little bit of Iran right here, Jordan, Syria. There's another map out right now that just perfectly fits up against this Kurdistan map. I mean, they're like literally, seems like
Well,
the same
is
people
that the
drew
old
it.
Babylonian map? That's a old Babylonian area for anybody that's interested in history. Yeah, that's that dark yellow as it would be like where Babylon was centered as well.
Right. This is the cradle of civilization. And,
Mhm.
on top of that, not to mention, but more and more of all of this oldest stuff gets destroyed every time we have one of these. And so within a week, we've heard, okay, it's only going to be a bombing campaign, really short. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's going to last 4 to 5 weeks. And then Pete Hegseth comes out and says, well, it's going to be about 8 weeks. Now, today, they've upped that to September. So
No, they
September's
did
when
not. You're
they
kidding
did.
me.
No, I'm not. So they think September is when they'll finally, figure out this whole thing. But this is the maps that's going to get cut up, and obviously Turkey and Iran and Iraq traditionally didn't want a big chunk cut out of their country, and different people have proposed it over time. They've tried it; it never works out. But this time, they might actually have a chance, especially with the world push to create a new nation there and to topple this Iranian nation that's been there forever. Under different names. But if you look at this map, this edge of this red line right here would be the new Kurdistan. That would be their new country right here. Um,
Goes into Turkey as well, doesn't it?
yeah. The because you have Kurds in all of these countries, so they're like a nation without a nation, and they traditionally get used over and over again. I remember if you remember back when there was supposed to be yellow cake uranium in Iraq, and everyone on the news, right, left, it didn't matter. They said, hey, they got weapons of mass destruction there. But what they never told you is there was two sides of that argument. A bunch of people came out and said, "Hey, well, they don't have that. They don't have those weapons of mass destruction." But they would never tell you that they did have a lot of weapons of mass destruction sold to them directly from the United States, like mustard gas and things like that. Matter of fact, on one occasion, um, the United States sold the Kurds some mustard gas, or was it anthrax? I forget which one it was. One of the nasty ones. So they sold it to Saddam thinking that they could make a deal with them. So he turned around and used it on them right afterwards, right after because they made a deal with the US. So hopefully, you know, this works out before then, but I don't think so because this is part of that greater remapping plan that has been there. And it's pretty obvious to see why. It's because all of these places meet right here. This is the connection spot to the entire world. If you control this, you do control the world. You control all the trade routes, all the pipelines, all of the trains, and the airspace that goes along with it. And then if you have, like we were talking about before, if you were going to run a nation, you have to have the Suez Canal and you have to have um, the Strait of Hormuz. If you don't have that, you don't leak the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean out to the Pacific. It's straightforward. We have to, if we're going to be an empire, we have to control that spot. So you can be pro or against the war, whatever you want, but if you're looking at it as far as just a historical thing like empires on Earth, you would see that they have to have that. All of the empires want that. The Russian Empire, the Chinese Empire, the Middle Eastern alliances that don't really stick together, and even the Western powers. We have to have that area. And this goes back all the way to the naming of Europe, when you had Princess uh, Europa from Tyre right there in Israel. That's literally where we get the name for Europe. These powers go back all the way into antiquity. They keep getting renamed. But essentially, it comes down and boils down to the same thing is you have to have that little spot in the Mediterranean because then you control the ports of the world. You control the trade of the world. Even think back to like the Silk Road. Where did it start? It started over by the Mediterranean and worked its way across Asia. Pretty big road. Oh, you're muted again. You turn yourself off. There you go. Is that the big scooping, the scooping marks, man? You know about
Baalbek.
that.
Baalbek. There's some delay here in the thing. Yeah, Baalbek. So you were mentioning that a lot of the things were destroyed. I wonder if they're going to lay a couple things into Baalbek, these large megaliths, the world's largest that are unexplainable, that have been unexplainable forever because they're too big for modern equipment to move. Like even to move these blocks of stone, our modern machines still are not to this level to be able to move these 2,000-ton stones. Where and how do you think that you're going to be moving something like this? Let's see if I can bring it large. There you go. Like we can't move these today. And there's a person right here for reference on how large it's here, all the way across as one contiguous stone. So some of these things in history just don't make sense. Now, if there's a chance to, away and blow them all up, and hey, they were just fragments, and you guys were crazy talking about there's never any stones like that. There's no way. That's just a thing of a myth and a tale. Like, how many generations do you think it would be if the war actually destroyed all of these ancient sites and the large megaliths with these weapons that we have? How many generations would it be before people would forget, and then it was an old wives' tale, and anybody who mentioned this, that nobody couldn't, where modern machines couldn't even list 2,000 times? What are you guys talking about? That's insane. They never built anything. They only had like wheels and like wooden wheels and stuff. Come on. Like, how quickly could you destroy a portion of history?
Well, I always thought
and then,
those
rewrite the history is the question. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because you mentioned a lot of things were going to be destroyed during this time of antiquity. And I would agree. They're trying to erase the past with larger weapons because you just can't walk away with those things or break them up or dump them in the ocean like the Smithsonian had done, or put them in a basement of a museum or some sort of, research institute. Like, those are just too big You're going to have to hide them, blow them up, and then you can take the fragments away.
Well, think about this too. Those are ancient claims on the land as well. So if you claim to be a certain type of people, say Persian or Babylonian, or you could go back in time, different names. But if all that was there, and then you freed it in Iran, they're gonna culturally latch on to all of that stuff if it was still there. But guess what? Most of it got blown up already in the first war that we did over there. So you're getting rid of it's almost like in the Americas when they won't accept any other theory about peoplings of the Americas. So they exclude a lot of things. And those stones that you showed are really ironic because they're just sitting there and empire after empire has came along, looked at it, couldn't explain it, and just skipped over it because, what are they going to do about it? And it's really funny because I think that those things specifically, that one that you showed, is one of the keys to the lost civilization because there's a type of technology there with the scooping marks that you see underneath it. Something was happening that left these scooping marks, and you find them on all of the megalithic stuff in South America. So the like Flaylock, or however you say it, the rain god. There's a big old stone in the middle of the right out front of the Mexican history of natural history or whatever, the museum. And right on the back of it, there's these scoop marks, and they match things in Peru. They match things in the Middle East. They match things in Greece and other places. And it's always where you find these giant megalithic stones. But what's funny is there's one example of it that hasn't been destroyed and is still sitting somewhere that's just magnificent. If you've ever seen it, it's in China. It's a big cave that's been carved out, and the entire thing has those scoop marks everywhere. So it shows a link of technology all the way around the world with all peoples at least at a certain time. And think about, like, you have all of these different governments. You got the Greeks, the Romans, and then later, different nations form there. And none of them are trying to dig that rock up and find out how it got there, who put it there. None of that. They just skip over it. It doesn't matter. We got other stuff going on, the price of gas, the price of food, and all that. They don't care. But speaking of Lebanon, that's what you're seeing behind me there, which is the only war zone on earth that's allowed to be televised live. For some reason, all of the other ones have to be. I don't want to say
Censored.
well, that's the basic word for it, but it's more like manipulated. They just need a couple of days to make sure that the propaganda looks right. So if you're in Israel, you cannot film the skyline. You cannot do that. You cannot show an impact or the skyline in live time. You have to get permission from their government. A few days later, you might be able to publish it. And ironically, in Iran, they blamed the Iranian government for cutting the internet, but I'm pretty sure that we did that. And then on top of that, we have the admission that AI is running things now. So this is from the top. AI is running stuff just like I said it would. And we know that AI hallucinates, right? Because that's been a big topic. It hallucinates, it gets things wrong. So when you put it in a position to take over human decisions, it's going to hallucinate. And who knows what's going to happen? I mean, we played it in movie after movie before there really was an AI, right? You had the old one, War Games. Do you want to play a game, right? And all the way up into Terminator, the Terminator series. And literally, we have an equivalent to Skynet right now. And we're talking about giving even more control over to this AI. And when you look at the whole picture, kind of like from the past, present, and right now, it really seems to be no other choice besides that there is an entity trying to kill off the human race, but they needed it to create the system to do that. So we're at that point now. I still see people on Twitter arguing that we should push the CO2 level down below 200, which is
That's extinction level event.
right. It's completely suicidal. And anytime you look on Earth, when biological life was doing good, the CO2 was skyrocketing, 1,000 parts per million, or, more than that, maybe even at times, but at least at that level. And nowhere in human history, it just keeps, we're in this little warm spot in between glacial periods. And they're trying to convince us to kill off the thing that grows the food. Seems completely suicidal. However, a planet that was run completely by AI and only needed data centers and water and electricity, well, it doesn't need humans at that point. I mean, basically, you would just have a planet with giant data centers that would have to clear out areas of wildlife and human habitation so that they could claim the energy rights and the water rights and the mineral rights.
And have autonomous robots that are intelligent enough to do the work of humans. So staying on that same vein here, AI, if it is truly in control of this battle plan scenario and next moves type thing, 95% of the time it recommends nuclear strikes.
Right.
95% of the time. So I'm wondering if a human will actually look at that and, oh, you found the same one. Yeah. Because I'm wondering if a human will actually step in and go, no, we're not going to listen to the AI this time.
What happens
I'm
if
really
we get
hoping there's
locked
some
out?
clearer heads,
What happens if we get locked out is the problem.
Well, yeah, AI could lock you out because they're coding faster and they control many more things so much faster.
What if you don't have a big enough credit score to vote in the AI system?
Would you even want to be in that system?
I don't know. We're going to have to figure out how to live alongside of it somehow. I mean, it's just purely that. So when you see all of these things going on around the world, you know that food is going to be something that's a major topic. And the question is who gets starved out? You were just talking about, things going bad in Iran, but I really don't think that they'll have that problem. As we've talked about before, that area is greening quite a bit, especially in the mountainous areas, which is about 70% of Iran. So they're going to be able to do farming if left alone. I'm not saying they will be left alone. It'll be the people in the larger cities that suffer the most.
Yeah, it is greening. There's a change in the jet streams due to the weakening magnetic field on the planet. So the areas are going to regreen. This is talked about in the Quran and the Bible both. So the regreening of once formerly deserts, like we understand now, has been mentioned in both texts. So what is happening now? Well, the deserts are regreening. There's a new flow of the jet stream. So that pushes moisture from different places that normally would bypass it on a more north-south flow versus just east-west. And that's why a lot of things are coming. They're getting record floods every other day in like Mecca, which is the west side of Saudi Arabia, right on the Red Sea there. So nobody's discussing how the Middle East food situation is now. So just to give some numbers for you here, the UAE imports 80 to 90% of its food. And remember, those are the 7 different emirates that are combined as the 7 states of the UAE. Saudi Arabia, 80%, Kuwait, 98%. Now, the same thing was being said about U.S. Navy, like where are they going to resupply their weapons, where are they going to resupply their fuel? They're not. They're going to have to go to Diego Garcia or somewhere else that's friendly with us to be able to go. And they're generally not even set up for that, because that was all done over there in Qatar and this sort of thing. So what happens now? It's the same exact thing. Like our ships can't get in to get refueled and restocked with different weapons. That's the same thing as not getting restocked with food, because a ship, when its whole purpose is grinding through materials like we need to eat. Strait of Hormuz and shipping rates have exploded 650%. That's a 6.5x. So I had the latest number from today. It was 40,000 and now it's 300,000 per day. So just the rates on the shipping itself, all these costs are going to get passed along to you. Yeah, okay. So it even has it there, but it didn't say where the baseline was. So I had 40,000 this morning and it went up to 300,000 by the afternoon. And these are very large crude carriers. Those about, the 2 million barrel per day, or 2 million barrels loaded into those ships. $423,000 a day. LNG, those are liquefied natural gas carriers, moving up to $300,000 a day. Container lines, damn, that's huge. I didn't even see that. $1,500 to $4,000 per container. So some of these very large container carriers as well. Instead of crude carriers, they got box carriers. They're paying, they can put up to, what are they, about 4,000 containers on some of these ships. Imagine having to pay $4,000 in surcharges on those thousands. You're talking and all the cargo going through, you're talking hundreds and billions of dollars just for extra surcharges. And the only thing I'm going to say is that's going to get passed along to us. The companies aren't going to lose the money. They're just going to make everything more expensive. You have the choice. You can buy it or not buy it. And they're going to run it up as high as they can and get to this price point and demand destruction. And then they'll realize, okay, we'll lower the prices a smidgen because people still bought at just that level before. Nobody buys because it's too expensive. And they're going to run it back down on the backside. But the whole way up until they figure out where people will stop spending because it's too expensive, they're going to run you through a ladder that you never knew existed. Now, how are we going to pay for that? See, this is the whole thing on if things get that expensive across the board for everything, because there's surcharges on this, there's surcharges on that. Everything's got a surcharge on it because it transited through some area over there, including the fertilizers, which we need that. Then, how do people, life was getting a little expensive for a lot of people anyway. You read all the news articles, and that whole thing of cost of living in America was already causing borderline crisis anyway right now. Add this in, and we are so far over the range here that it's going to be difficult to put words in it to have policies that are going to solve some of these problems. Like, how do you solve the problem of everything becomes 2 to 3 times more expensive across the board? I don't care what you buy or consume in America. Imagine your entire daily life cost just triples. That is outside of the affordability for most. And at that point, then you have rioting people. And we've seen this through history. When they can't afford their food, when they can't afford their rent or homes to stay, generally they got nothing less to lose. So then they go at it. So we're just rewinding chapters of history here. So prolonged food blockade. They do have some strategic food reserves, but you get into that feedback loop. Once people know it's really scarce, they're going to pull more. So got ladybugs everywhere here. The need and the want of the people becomes much more when they know they can't get it. So they're going to try to buy more, hoard more, get more, whatever you like to call that, just to save more for their family because they know it's getting scarce. I highly doubt 2 to 3 months of food, because I was reading a lot of these and looking at these different analysts that are over in the Middle East. I'm going to take us to Al Jazeera in a little bit here, take a look. But I like to look at both sides. Like over here in America, most people are just rah. I'm going to watch the nightly news. We're winning, we're kicking their ass, whatever. I'm over here on the analyst side looking at the prognostication of what a quagmire this already is and how many things are going to be affected in terms of goods and services, materials, how industry is going to not shut down totally, but be completely restricted, how fast the prices of everything in daily life is just going to rise beyond the unaffordability of most of the planet. And then how that itself is going to create a chaos loop. 60 million people, no food. And again, I have not seen anywhere putting 2 to 3 months out. They're talking 3 weeks. That here, these countries might have 2 to 3 months maximum of strategic food. I just haven't seen that anywhere from any analyst. And I've listened to dozens and dozens of them. I'll spend most of my day just listening to people talk about this that are not from America, that are over in different countries, analyzing it from a different rah-rah squad from here. So nowhere have I heard 2 to 3 months of strategic food reserves. That just came a sentence. I don't know where it popped up from. I heard 3 weeks unanimously across the board. 3 weeks. That's the whole thing. They're trying to wait out. Like these Iranians, man, they have so many. They've been making these drones for like 20 years. They're stock-a-block chalked in all these different cave systems and things. We don't even know where most of them are.
Right.
There's $30,000 drones, man. They got 80,000 of these things at least known that they've manufactured. They're just going to keep rolling them over. That's a slow grind. We're spending millions to knock one of these things down. We're going to run out of missiles eventually. There's the whole thing too. Like, how much armaments do we have? And we can keep spending on these little like low tech things that they're saving their good stuff for later. They're sort of like rolling it out now, but their whole thing is like $30,000 drones wasting $4 million or $5 million worth of our missiles. Every one drone they send, we spend $5 million in missiles, which we can't replenish at the rate they have. So the two unanimous things, those are the two. Food's going to run out in 3 weeks if the blockade doesn't stop. And Iran's just going to slow grind everybody into oblivion with this economic balance. And they're going to deplete most of our munitions in the next, say, 2 weeks or so, it'll be a noticeable uptick of strikes happening, of everything just rolling in. At that point, the disruptions on industry is going to be heavy. And also the Amazon Web Services and any kind of thing. Oh, yeah, here it is. Let's see. This is the targeted one here. I got something for you. There we go. So Iran is now trying to destroy the Amazon data centers. Now they know where these things are, so they're going after specifically data centers from the West. So they know what's. You look at this and you go, "Oh my gosh!" Perhaps they're the ones that will save the world from AI because they're going to destroy it. And you look at this; they're trying to destroy all key data centers across the entire Middle East. That's part of the data center thing that's enslaving humanity anyway. So imagine if the Iranians are the ones who actually free humanity in a bizarro way because they blow up all the data centers, which was going to be the control mechanism for all of humanity. This thing's getting weirder by the minute. I'm telling you. Back to you, Ransom.
Yeah, right. This is what's funny is because this is all part of the plan is to get rid of the stockpile of old stuff.
Yeah, sure.
They've already demonstrated that we don't need the intercept missiles and things like that to stop it. You remember a couple years ago, everybody laughed at MTG because she was saying that Israel had space lasers,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody laughed at her. And now they've publicly announced that they're using those exact space lasers to shoot down missiles and ground based. And people wanted to know why all the silver was going everywhere. Well, part of the answer to that is because they're building all kinds of new defense systems for at the end of this exchange of old weaponry. And like and then it's funny that you were talking about that also with the you know, how come nobody was planning ahead for this stuff? And this should have told you that we were about to go to war right here,
Yeah.
because this is all about making sure that we can produce enough gross food so that the common people do not complain at the store that they're starving. So we're going to pump out lots of glyphosate and phosphorus and all of that stuff strategically here at the homeland. And
Glyphosate.
that's what that was about. That's what those executive orders were about. And everybody's mad because they were saying, "Oh, well, we don't want the glyphosate in our food," and blah blah blah. Well, it's not about that. It's about a long term strategy against China. So we have to have all of these chemicals and things to produce massive amounts of unhealthy food, but that's not the point. It's still food and it still fills your belly, and people won't riot if they're full, but they will if they're not. And then, you know, what are they going to do when they run out of the weapons? It's right here. Laser weapons deployed in Operation Epic Fury as Space Force stops Iran's missiles in their tracks. Well, they've been doing this. I even made a whole video about this a while back when people were arguing on whether or not a laser based on a plane or a satellite could start a fire. And I kept pointing out back in 1990s, we were melting motor blocks with microwave beams from C-130s. So obviously, if we could do it in 1990s, the things have become much more high tech, much more precise, much more easy to mass produce. And that's what we're about to see is complete drone warfare everywhere. And as everybody's getting to see that, we predicted that also, that you were about to see this type of thing from Ukraine move to other places. Actually, we predicted it before they were really doing it in Ukraine, but they're the ones that ramped it up first. And now you see it in the Middle East. And those little drones, do you remember the whole debacle about these mystery drones in the U.S.? And we had people from the State Department, other people claiming that it was Iranian technology. Well, I don't believe that Iranian drones were flying around the United States. I do believe American-based tech firms were flying them around to see how easily we could track them, how easily the public would notice them, spot them, identify them, and report them. Because we're about to enter that same era here. And mark my words, in the United States, in the next year or two, you will have some kind of automated drone attack right here in the U.S. We know that there's hundreds of thousands of people from the republic over there that we're bombing that's already came into our borders within the last 4 years and the years before that. And do you think that they don't know how to set up with the same components that you can buy from Amazon and a lawnmower motor to create a drone to do that right here in the United States? Well, the answer is yes. And that's why you saw all those FFA moves and the government moving to control all the AI and all the drones and all the airspace. And then they did their own little ops right there in front of you where they flew drones all around the East Coast to see how worried the public would get, whether or not the public could figure it out, find out where they were coming from, identify the technology. And of course, in regular fashion, it got put on UFOs. UFOs did it.
Ay, ay, ay. Now, just before we go on break here, please stay with us for the second hour. We're going to get deeper in the analysis over on buymeacoffee.com/civilization. Rhonda Holub, hee-haw, I got to pronounce the name correctly. Hooked on phonics, but I think it should look like Holub. Why that makes me remember hee-haw. Oh, dancing and on the old haystack there. And I'm going to read Catherine Barlow's, but someone I'll come back to, as I come back to the second hour about the 1930s and the no spring or fall. So Catherine Barlow reads, do you think anyone will get nuked? Will Florida get a submarine bomb? I'm just going to say I have no idea. I really don't, because if AI is running the thing and 95% of the time they go to nuclear weapons, it's going to then take the human to step in and go, I know it's a prediction. I know they tossed us this one. Softball. Come and get it. Launch a nuke. But I think humanity in itself, we have the override capacity. I would hope that somebody's sane. But again, Ransom, you talked about we're going to have a limited exchange over there. A global economy will collapse. We're going to go to stable coins directly after that. Once we go to stable coins, they can write off the entire U.S. debt. Start everything from scratch. We need an entirely new system. It'll all be based on minerals, gold, silver, commodities, and then we're going to get an entirely new system out of that. So would it come to that? And would they, I don't know, Florida submarine bomb? I haven't really heard that. I know they were threatening one over there to the UK, the Russians were. They said they had some sort of weapon that would generate a tidal wave that would be full of nuclear material. All I know is that. So Ransom, you want to follow up and then we'll head on break here.
I don't think we'll ever have a full-scale nuclear war. It's
no, not a full scale, work. Maybe a couple little ones.
But I do think that the countries will exchange one. China's even admitted that they'll take one, but we're not going to fire a second one at them. They'll not ever. They claim they'll never do the first shot, but we won't fire a second one at them. Russia says, you know what? If you guys keep playing, we'll use them. The United States has already proven historically we will use them. And we're not worried about it. And matter of fact, we'll use it on a nation that surrenders.
And on civilians.
So, yeah, I think it's very possible they could pop off 2 to 6 nukes around the world, scare everybody into oblivion, especially if they don't want to capitulate to the new world government. And then think about this. You could have a whole new renaissance in the future where you decommission these nuclear devices so that they could power the data centers, which are going nuclear. As we speak.
They surely are. And if you could do that, the pebble bed nuclear reactors, yeah, that's where it's going. So anyway, join us for the second hour right here on the Civilization Cycle podcast. I'm David Devine with Ransom Gatto, and you're bringing through first hour. I hope you got something out of our analysis. Again, I was just trying to point at facts and things that could be. I'm going to run through a few of the slides that I've captured over the last few days on what types of fertilizer and what has been disrupted so far and what is anticipated to be disrupted further. You can then you take the ball with it and run, and then you can start to see all the other knock-on effects going from country to country, continent to continent on the disruptions of industry. And from that point, you can kind of see where some opportunities might be. Not financial advice, but there's going to be plenty. And if you're just ready for it and you're kind of seeing the signs, if it goes through the weekend, then we enter the week 2 scenarios, and I run through a few of those. I do have some, like Ransom did. I got a couple of zero hedge articles, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes. And we do support our sponsors, and they support us. So please take a listen. There's always something for everybody, and we'll be back in a couple minutes. Hey everyone, are you ready to grow your own fresh, delicious vegetables, herbs, and flowers this season? If you're looking for the highest quality heirloom and organic seeds, I've got the perfect company for you, True Leaf Market. They've been a trusted seed company since 1974, offering 3,000 types of non-GMO varieties, everything from classic heirloom tomatoes and peppers to rare herbs, microgreens, sprouting seeds, and beautiful flowers. All their seeds are open pollinated, pure, and perfect for home gardeners or anyone wanting healthy, flavorful produce without chemicals. What I love the most is their huge selection, fast shipping guarantees, plus options for bulk if you're going big. If you're excited to start your garden this year with real, authentic heirloom and organic seeds, click the link in the description box below to check out trueleafmarket.com. You won't regret it. Happy planting, and thank you for supporting the channel and this broadcast. Product you love, the 72-hour emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Not only emergency food, but camping food, and you can prepare that through the week as well. 20 delicious just add water meals. Think about creamy mac and cheese, hearty chili, sweet oatmeal. 2,000 calories a day. You need the calories. You're going to need to think and move. And the mashed potatoes, easier to make than oats, and you can add your own flavors. Goes with anything. For less than a couple of takeout meals at a fast food restaurant, get real peace of mind. And a real question to ask, how long could your family eat without leaving home? My Patriot Supply, click on that link in the description box below. It helps the channel. Truth is hard to say and hard to hear. Most people choose silence. We choose to speak. Your support of our sponsor keeps the Civilization Cycle podcast on air and giving us the courage to keep digging. That link's in the description box below. This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients. Essential oils, minerals, salts. Alpha Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. You know, we're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world.
Please remember to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Civilization Cycle. And thank you for all the support.
And we're back.
We're back. Ransom, bring us in, man.
Well,
where do we go from here? I mean, I was going to jump over to Al Jazeera because this is a banned network in America. How dare you bring in Al Jazeera? That might just get our video flagged. Just bringing this website on. This is how much they do not want you to see this website in America. I'm serious when I say that. So let's read through it here. For those of you looking for deeper analysis, that's not our PR machine here in America. You could go over here for one of the examples. You can also go to Chinese publications. There's a huge amount of different news publications around the world that are covering this in a different fashion and form. You know, there's just different ways to look at the. So then this said, so look at the headlines, how different it is from what we consider our headlines here in America. So I'll even go to the Middle East first and not on the news. Let's just click on the Middle East and see what it says, because they break it down into different genres of news. So Let's go to the African news. Like, not a lot of people see African news, but Africa's picking a lot up on this because these countries are part of Africa and the Middle East, right? So, oh yeah, the coltan mine. There's been a huge mine collapse over there in the Democratic People's Republic of the Congo, and Israel puts a target on the back of rules-based order. That's a opinion piece, and again, they get deeper on into some of these things. They're really into the cricket, and I know America is not a cricket country, so it doesn't really matter too much. Now, they explained here sections. Now, this is an interesting one. Just for those of you who don't know how large Iran is, that's how large it is. That is as large as the grow belt of the America. You know, to put it in perspective, Afghanistan's 1/4 of the size, and we could never do anything there effectively. It's 4 times bigger, more mountainous, and that's the lower 48. Now you realize the size of that. It would take you 20 hours or more just to drive through that one bit there from, say, down where it starts in Louisiana, going all the way up there to Montana. A good 20 hours or more driving. This is a vast place. This is not just a tiny place that we go in on a map and we go, boom. This is one of the largest countries, you know. It's 2.5 times the size of Texas and covers about 1/6 of our America lower 48. So imagine a force coming in to try to control 1/6 of America, landmass wise. It's almost unthinkable that you could actually control that. So,
Well, kind of about the thing about
we're trying to
Afghanistan.
identify like even our intelligence services don't understand who's starting to take these reins of power so quickly because we never knew them and didn't focus on them because they were back in shadows, but suddenly thrust into the front. So a lot of these explainers here are trying to tell you who these people are from the eyes of the Middle Easterners that already kind of knew who they were, but they weren't on our radar at all. So as you're coming in and then, you know, taking a look at all these new leaders and heads, okay, well they blew up the council of 3 that was choosing the new supreme leader. Okay. Well, now 3 people replace them. Like their constitutional republic has safeguards in place for every single maneuver. Of any time groups of people are removed or for whatever reason, doesn't matter if it's a natural disaster, if it's a war, if it's some sort of coup or whatever it is, they have this plan in place where there's instant replacement of everybody up the chain. So these people are coming out of nowhere. We don't know who they are. And then suddenly they're taking center stage and we need to study who they are. But they're already putting the analysis out for you if you wanted to know who they were. And here's one last one. I heard you say something there, Ransom, in the background.
Oh, I was just saying that Afghanistan seemed pretty obvious that it wasn't about actually taking or beating Afghanistan. It was about trade routes for drugs, trade routes for weapons, trade routes for intelligence. And it's more than obvious. I mean, matter of fact, right now in Pakistan, some of that stuff we left in Afghanistan is popping up, and India's getting upset about it. So how ironic that we left $81 billion worth of U.S. equipment in the hands of the Taliban that created Al Qaeda, the base, which then created ISIS, which terrorized the Middle East, but now is supposedly in our back pocket, even though decades of denying that we were doing anything or arming or working with ISIS. But now the ex head of ISIS is the new president of Syria.
Yeah, and as you look through some of the news, they're not really reporting on the damage that's occurred for our military forces over there. We're playing it off here like we might have got a little something to hit our embassy. If you do look at some of the footage here of the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, it looks like Pearl Harbor. You got smoke coming up so deep, and there's like rattling missile explosions going off, and our fifth, it's paralyzed over there. Like we are not refueling, rearming anything. They took that place pretty much out. Unbeknownst to what we would hear from here, it's still and here's some numbers that came in from the UAE Defense Ministry. So just numbers for you here. I'll put it in blue so we can find it. 186 missiles were launched, 172 destroyed. So they don't tell you how many got through. Notice the clever math on that. You think they would go, all right, well, 72, 82, plus 4. Oh, that's 14 ballistic missiles that got through and rained down and blew something up. Pipelines, for example. Oil terminals in a U.S. base, for example. They don't tell you. See, they're very clever when they write the news like this. Additionally, 812 drones were sent off, and only 755 of them were intercepted. So, how many got through?
Hmm.
50 plus is how many got through. And you're like, that's only in one day. They're just raining stuff down everywhere. Qatar's ministry said they found the 101 were launched and 98 were intercepted. That still leaves 3. It still leaves 3. And they shot down the jets that were just getting ready to attack the American base over there. So everywhere you look, like, I don't know if you all are hearing this, because I am not seeing a lot of this stuff on the American news in terms of the damage being done over there. Maritime insurers cancel any kind of coverage. So when Trump was saying that I'm going to help you guys pay for your insurance to go through there, I'll supplement it. Insurance companies and insurance carriers specifically for vessels are like, we're not going to insure it at all. You're not going through there. Zero insurance. You go through there, uninsured ship. I don't care if Trump insures it. He's paying for 100% of it, because we're not giving you diddly squat. And, how much is this going to cost the U.S.? See, this is another goodie. And they've been bombing a lot of shadows on the runways, too. I don't know if you saw that ransom where these videos are coming out where they're bombing. They put like thermal paint on the runways to make it look like a helicopter, to make it look like some sort of, I don't know, F-35 or maybe not there, but the Russian version.
Yeah, that's an old school U.S. tactic that we used to do, like inflatable tanks and things like that.
Inflatable tanks, yeah.
I'm kind of weirdly obsessive compulsive about losing things. So like if I lose something, I'll tear my entire house up, the yard. I want to go in the neighbor's yard just for a little thing that I lost. Like anything misplaced, I have to find it. I can't let it go. It's in the back of my mind. I won't be able to sleep or concentrate on anything just because I know it's there, right? So I have this same OCD when it comes to remembering things that are lost. Like I see an article that says we may run out of ammunition in this war real soon, blah blah blah, and then I remember, hey, didn't we give the Department of Education, the Department of Interior, and several other departments, crates and crates full of 40 cal and 223 and 556 for no apparent reason during the Obama administration? Not to mention Fast and Furious. Not even to mention Fast and Furious movement of arms and things, but just think about that thing alone. They said that was enough ammunition to have a 7-year war with who? The American people. Why they would say that, I have no idea. But to tell us that they don't have enough ammunition for, I don't know, the next 6 months or whatever, it seems preposterous. And then you got to remember we lost a couple nukes for Minot, went to Texas. And then people were all freaking out because it wasn't supposed to go there. Nobody knew why it was getting transferred. And then we have Afghanistan. But remember this thing called Benghazi that was supposed to be a diplomatic thing. And we had all of the diplomatic end on the news about the people that got killed from the U.S. But what they failed to mention most of the time is probably about 2,000 surface-to-air missiles disappeared there, along with some other missiles made by the United States. I forgot the name of those things. Were they man pads? I think it was. Yeah. 2,000.
I was trying to point out the 33s in the numbers for anybody paying attention. 33. That's always a signal. So there's some play in this that's not organic. I'm just saying that.
Right, and I was thinking about that too because I predicted we'd go to war on the moon on 3/3, but instead we went 3 days earlier. We went 3 days earlier to the month of Mars there. It's just it's hard to believe that some people were saying, how could there be a plan to do this to Iran if Trump's only been in office for a little while? Well, it's a standing plan. If you remember Wesley, what is it, General Wesley Gates, I believe is his name. Don't mark my words on names because I'm bad with them. But anyway, that guy went in and he bragged at a little speech about how, he was told we were going to knock down 7 countries in the Middle East. And whenever you get the list of the names, it was, what was it? The Myanmar? Was it that? What was the other one that collapsed there? And then, so we didn't have to do nothing really with that. And then we had Iraq, Iran, Syria, Jordan, Tunisia, and a couple of other ones I forgot. Now tell me, what number are we on now? Did we get all 7? I think we did.
We did, and they've also just started to talk about going into Turkey. I've heard of a fair few newscasters coming over from Israel saying, "Hey, we need to. There's a lot of things going on in Turkey, and we need to start thinking about that over there. It could be hostile,
More than hostile.
more than hostile. Yeah,
It's
again,
the new
hostilities everywhere, everywhere.
Turkey is the new technological manufacturing center, not only for the Middle East, but for Europe. Germany and some other countries have already made contracts to buy these new drones and things that they've been producing there. The problem with it is that they're friends with Russia and us and the Middle East and Europe. So you're right. Whose side will they be on at the end? And then where do all those weapons that they've been manufacturing and taking investments for? Because they are buddies with Russia, despite being a NATO country. And you think they're really going to get along too good with Russia if they supply Germany and Poland and everybody else with anti-aircraft drones and things like that? I don't think so.
Yeah, I was trying to find the what you were talking about. I know what you mean by the 7 countries meaning to be attacked Middle East, and what was that plan?
That was literally the PNAC plan.
Yeah, here it is. 7 countries, 5 years.
Right.
Wesley Clark, General Wesley Clark. You were correct, I think, on the name there.
All right.
So here's the 7 countries that General Wesley Clark had mentioned. Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, finishing off Iran. Sudan, I don't know. I know there's a lot of fighting between North and South Sudan, the civil war still kicking off, but we haven't really been heavily involved over there. But if you think that's about the Sudanese being put upon themselves, they're just taking it to the sledgehammers to each other over there. Like, we haven't, as Americans, been really fully engaged in Sudan. Somalia, what was that, Black Hawk Down area?
Right. We lost that one, though. They moved all them over here to destabilize us.
Yeah. And then finishing off with Iran. Yeah. And I'm telling you, Turkey's going to be on the firing block here soon. Now, this was the year 2001 that they were talking about this. So this is a 20-year plan, 24-year plan.
Right. And then think about this with, speaking of Turkey, what I was bringing up before is the Kurds are going to want to cut a big chunk out of their land. And Turkey don't want that to happen. They never have. They've been guilty of even going over into Iran and Iraq in the past to kill Kurds. So that's going to be the Shatter Belt Center right there, northern Iraq, where we're, as I showed the article before, we're already CIA backing some people to come in there as foot soldiers in the northern part of the mountains on the border of Turkey right there.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up a few. We got the Kingdom of Himar, which is what would be Oman and Yemen today, going back in time. So the Middle East assets. So one of the largest, and another thing a lot of people aren't talking about, is the desalination plants that are going to be at risk here next. So as they just go in order of destroying targets. So I found out this, they call them towers of salt. There's a real name for that, towers of salt. The Gulf states lead the world in desalination because they have to. They just don't have any water over there. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, are the 2 largest of those areas of brine discharge in the entire Middle East. So if Saudi Arabia is going to be hit, what happens if their water is affected? See, this is another one. Play it out and do, game theory on this one. So if the UAE, all 7 of the Emirates, if they were to lose their water, then how viable is that for a real estate destination, for a real estate investment hub? It's not. It'll take a while to even replace the water. How long do you think it would take to replace an entire desalination plant that had been smashed to smithereens? Years. And at the same time, as this capital flees, we'll bring it back to the beginning of the program, this infinite money glitch that they have here. We buy their oil and gas. We pay them in dollars and U.S. Treasury bonds. They in turn use the cash we gave them plus the securitization of those bonds because they're, AAA rated. They're tier one assets, so they can get loans on a one-to-one basis against that. So then what do? They get that actual cash using the treasury bonds as collateral, and then they roll it into our stock market. And this is the infinite money glitch that's going on here. That is one of the reasons our stock market has risen so incredibly and never seems to stop, is because the purchasing of the energy never stops. And that money goes back in and then it flips. It's like this infinite loop, literally back and forth, back and forth. So once the desalinization plants are tagged, walk it out. How long can they survive without water? We got 3 weeks on the food moving in here. So there's a little bit of timeline on that. But if you go forward and if any of the desal plants start to get hit real heavy, then that shortens the time even faster because, you need more water than you do food. So that's just kind of one thing, to gear out on here. I can't find a way to share those images with you there, Ransom, or I would have popped that one up.
Well, look at this.
Thanks for the doom and gloom, guys. Newbie flip-flop. Yeah, hey, we're just analyzing the situation. It's not doom and gloom. It's about preparedness and kind of finding the opportunities during these times. You can gameplay all these out. You know exactly what's going to happen next. So where's the opportunity in that? And how can you take advantage of that to then help other people of taking advantage of that opportunity, just seeing cycles in time, and already people forecasting out that are more smart than me, that are already, that's their genre of expertise. And they're telling you, based on these factors, this next thing should occur. If this war keeps moving forward, there's a whole set of factors that are going to roll in, and it's a time-based thing. And they're gaming it out. Okay, after a week, this happens, 7 days, 14 days, this happens, 21 days, this happens. Where's the opportunity in spotting those time differentials? Huge, huge. The most money ever made in the human planet, ever on planet Earth, will be made right now during these times. Right now, during these next, however long this lasts, more money will be made during this time right now than ever in human history. So take advantage of that. It's not doom and gloom, it's analysis. But thanks for the double espresso. Cheers.
Yeah, well, think of all of human history. You could pick any time and say, hey, look, the events of the time are doom and gloom. But it keeps happening and we keep on going on and we keep on surviving. But to answer your question, here's the answer to that. It seems that Saudi Arabia specifically has already been planning for something to this effect. Because they've already started building and have been building this enormous tapping of the Arabian Peninsula ancient aquifer. So they got that down right there. They already pumping it out. Not too much desalinization needed because this is coming deep from the aquifer. So they could grow stuff. They can filter it and drink it. They can do what they want. However, when you look at this map, where is it? Right here. It's Saudi Arabia. Look who Dubai and the United Arab Emirates are not doing that, or not part of this project. So what do you think they're going to be buying water from the Saudi Arabians?
Well, I was trying to pull up a Middle East aquifer map because the one, the Sus aquifer and all these types of Middle East, North Africa aquifers that are incredibly large, that are over, especially, Egypt and over into Tunisia and that whole thing. Okay, here. What are the aquifers on the Arabian Shield is a question. Okay, let me pop up this map for you here. I got a goodie. I look at this stuff all the time, especially in Libya and the amounts of this, because I'm always looking to because Coffee had worked on this also. They had the projects for pulling water out of the ground, primary water sources, and Gaddafi was all about this because you have to look where the previous mega lakes were. And if you're going to grow food in a desert when the above ground water rainfall is increasing because of depleting magnetic field and different shifting jet streams, and then you could tap that beneath the groundwater, which has not really been polluted because they never tapped it and used it in sort of this industrial fashion we have during the Greenland Revolution, specifically in the 1960s, jamming it full of all these chemicals and fertilizers. They haven't damaged the water table like we have. So it's pretty much 95% clean. That's not polluted with much. Above ground water rainfall is increasing. Beneath they could tap these Nubian sandstone aquifer, the Sus aquifer. There's a whole bunch of different aquifers from Morocco all the way to Egypt. And that's what Gaddafi was trying to combine, was this large grow zone paid for with gold or their gold dinar, whatever they're going to kind of put together, along with the oil sales and the food at the same time. And then that was taken apart, and we blew apart every single water works that they had done, and they were growing like 100,000 acres of sorghum down southern southern part of the country. And it was a test project, and they showed that they could grow at least 100,000 acres of sorghum, and that's a very water intensive plant, even more intensive than corn. And they were growing that in the middle of the desert, just from what they found in the Nubian sandstone aquifer. So here's your sock aquifer. That's the biggest one that's running across there. So the way you can and there it's even shown exploitable aquifer area. It doesn't show the depths or the cubic kilometers of water, and that's how you measure. So there's plenty of water underground, but are they really, how saline is it? Because you got to realize the refill is coming from the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and then from the Indian Ocean. So the refill points too, and this is what they found coming off the Mediterranean. You had to go about 200 miles in, and then it started to come out of that brackish into, like, it had been filtered enough through the sandstone about 200 miles off the coastline inward into the aquifer. So you need to measure about 200 miles from either saltwater source coming in, which the cleanest one, in my opinion, all the research I've done and for years and years on this sort of thing, would be the Manjur aquifer that sits right in the middle. Because that would be the cleanest one for me. Because if you're way over here in the yellow, right around Daman, you're too close to the coast. Again, desalinate it, but don't have a desalination plant. Good luck. So this Manjur in this bottom part of the sock, like right in here, would possibly a little tip of the red, but 50 cent view here, man, for you. So no.
Yeah, that's this talking about that purple patch right there.
Yeah, let me look on your map. Yeah, you see, right, it's going to have to be sort of central right in the middle, because using the demarcations of degrees, so each degree is 60 miles. So we're jumping on, what's that, 4-degree marks there. So every one of those degree marks is 240 miles. So just to revert, just kind of move it in and then go 240 miles off the coast. You're way in by the double capital M from Mahdi Al Manwar. You're at that kind of at the M, the large M. So you're already that far. You're halfway across. So the only good water there that's not going to be brackish is pretty much in that central area, right where the red arrow is. Follow that straight through. They already had it. So that's the usable is limited there compared to places like Egypt and Tunisia and Morocco and Libya that are huge. They got tens of thousands of cubic kilometers of pristine water they could tap from.
You know what's
in Saudi Arabia, not so much.
What's really funny about this is if we went back 20 years, we were probably talking about, T. Boone Pickens and the Bush family, and there's many others that were buying up all the aquifers and water rights all over the place. And then, we were also tripping on, hey, everybody's building more nukes, more nuclear nations are popping up. And when you put that into a new perspective now, it doesn't even seem to be about really controlling the water for human consumption in that way. Think about, they have vast reserves now owned by some of the richest people in the world that will control the aquifers. And those people are also invested in data centers. And then we get to this, what we were talking about at the break, is that whole industry is moving nuclear. They realize that it's the easiest, cheapest, most efficient way to own their own energy. They don't have to rely on the sun. They don't have to rely on another grid. And they'll probably even be sucking out of the traditional civilian grids, which, by the way, are probably about 60 years out of date and obsolete.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that with the water, I wanted to jump back over to buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. Someone, before we went on the break, I was going to read this comment here. Thank you for the triple double espresso. So it says, been reading family journals from the 1930s to present. Interested in similarities to the current unpredictable weather/growing seasons. This comes back to what is possible for the Middle East now. It is going to become, in my opinion, not right this second, but in the future, the world's largest growing grain growing area. They'll get a double rotation crop, and if they start to pull that beautiful, pristine water out from beneath these massive areas in North Africa, they will have above ground precipitation increases, and beneath the water, then they can tap as much as they want. So, what pop? No longer having a proper spring and fall. Yeah, that's called magnetic field decline and jet stream disruption. That's super simple. Those two go together. And then you're getting the burning from the UV and the scorching. And I might add one thing, like these ballistic missiles that everybody's shooting all over the place, as they're coming back down, and also both, as they're ascending in altitude, they're going through different layers of the atmosphere. They're leaving a huge, huge, huge amount of pollution and particulates going through the mesosphere and then back down again. Those ice crystal clouds destroy the ozone, because that's where the O3 molecule, yeah, can drop on and attach to the ice crystal surface, and then another one come and attack it, and they break it off, and you got a single radical running around, and then that oxygen, the O2, drops back down. That single snaps onto another one. You got this continuous dropout in the atmosphere, and the more the ice crystal clouds are, the more the ozone depletes. But that wouldn't be natural, so you can't tax it, so you probably won't hear about it unless you do the research yourself. So check the interwebs. Brief reference to brutal late 1970s winter. AI provided historical comparison to whopping 6 years ago. Well, you could also say this year as well was like borderline unprecedented in terms of America. Now, Russia also and Japan, like these three areas on the planet were like literally unprecedented for the winter. For the snows, the places of the snows, the deepness of the cold, the ice storms. It's just like incredible things happen. And the record snows for hundreds of years broken of records in Russia and Japan both. So journals are already a family treasure now and appreciate the valuable resource. Yeah, you should always keep family journals. I did a lot of journaling when I was traveling in the 90s. I want to get those back down and read them. But yeah, thanks for the conversation. BB, thanks, someone. So anyway, Ransom, any comment to follow up on that?
Well, I was just looking at this article here. It says hyperscale AI data centers require city scale electric loads, making dependable base load power strategic necessary. Microsoft and Amazon, among others, are forming direct nuclear partnerships and preserving advanced reactor technologies to secure long-term energy supply. Now, think about this. We were already talking about, in the regular sense, on a regular electric grid, how much power these data centers, water these data centers need to keep cool and things like that. Now imagine how much water they're going to need to keep a nuclear facility, without it having issues. They need massive amounts of water, which means that probably in the near future, you're not only going to see them launching a bunch of these data centers into orbit, so that they can't be touched by other people on the planet. And then, to go woo woo, if there was an AI network that took control, what's the only way to preserve its longevity is to make sure that it's in places that humans can't destroy. And to another point, when we were talking about this possible nuclear exchange, which it would have to be in areas that nobody wants. So when you're talking about regreening of the Sahara and the Middle East and things to be new food growing areas, you can see that they're not going to nuke those areas. You're not going to nuke the areas in which you plan to grow food in the future. But maybe so. Like I said, they're okay with soaking it with forever chemicals and other stuff. When we often talk about population control, and that kind of fits into that, what you were talking about in the Middle East, lack of water, lack of food. But then over here in the U.S., we're having a 57% increase in the people from 55 and under having heart attacks. And a good portion of those people don't make it through those heart attacks. So over here, we're kind of just, removing ourselves from the equation as far as the greater population. So it's funny that these plans just keep going on with seemingly no attachment to the longevity of humans, because it's not about that. It's about these data empires and their quest for domination, which is about to move off world.
Yeah, so I had an answer for you. You like sparked my mind there. So the water consumption comparison chart, gallons per megawatt hour of electricity produced. So a nuclear power plant needs about 600 to 700 gallons per megawatt hour produced. AI hyperscale online site or on-site cooling, 100 to 700 gallons per megawatt, depending on their consumption. But look at the bottom, the AI direct total, 500 to 2,000 gallons. So even if you take the higher ranges of this, 700 for the nuclear plants and the higher end of the AI data centers, minus the total direct indirect from power grids, you're still looking at 2,000. That's nearly a 3x. That's pretty like incredible.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a real lot. So then
So
you can start to see why these billionaires have been buying the farmland. We were all hoodwinked thinking they were going to put up like GMO crops or something, but in reality, they were buying the water rights for the data centers. Plus, I might want to say one thing with that is, if you're buying farmland, what are you buying? You're buying a very large, flat, rectangular or square piece of property that is already sort of pre-graded to put a data center on it, and you get the water rights as well.
yeah, it almost really makes sense why all of these municipalities and states and governments were, super anal about controlling all the water runoff and whether or not you were storing water and whether or not you put a pond on your land. They want all of it. They literally do want all of it. And now we can finally see a reason for it. Because, we've talked many times, the future of warfare and empire is the AI data centers. So they're going to have to create them land based at first, but then they're going to start moving them off world so that it's a never ending system. It's a system that can never have a revolution at that point.
Yeah, if I were to go off world into, well, there's no way to really get at it at that point. If you're talking about space lasers or whatever, whoever has weapon systems to shoot down ballistic missiles, see, if it's already up at that boundary layer, that's where the lasers could target those. So eventually, I would say that somebody's going to invent something that stays at a lower altitude that can come in at a different type of angle that won't have that threat with it with lasers. Because I think once you get above a certain layer of the atmosphere, that the space-based lasers that are protecting can target those much more efficiently and easily if they're getting up toward the same altitudes versus something that's far down. But they're going to have to go through, you know, different types of pollutions and particulates and, try to get it being at equivalent altitude is going to be way easier. So these different types of missiles that are being developed that can move in transit and thing, that was the thing that they did to outsmart the system now. But now we're going to be dealing with lasers that can target in on that. Then I bet the entire system is going to have to move to a lower altitude operation on it to stay away from those lasers, because the further away you are and the more debris, smoke, dust, whatever in front of you. Yeah, I'm talking even up at, a couple 100,000 feet. Usually when meteorites come in or whatever, they leave that smoke and dust trail. That kind of stuff is all
Right.
reflective up there. Lasers don't like reflective things. They like pure, clear, go through, right?
Right.
So eventually, weapon systems we're gonna have to develop to be lower altitude operation. Then you're gonna have to hide from the space-based lasers.
Right. And another thing about this is once this is installed worldwide, there'll be different networks owned by different corporations, entities, governments, whatever you want to call them. But they're already starting the groundwork for banning you from being able to use these new tools to, benefit your life. So they just passed or signed in a legislation requiring AI frameworks for AI frontier models. So what that basically means is people in New York are not going to be allowed to Grok or Google or Chat GPT health information, tech information, and other information that the government there deems it a direct competition for their message. So they don't want you going to look up what it is. They don't like a community note every time that they post something and things like that. So what they're doing is they're passing laws where you can't even use the software to do anything, and it gets into disruptive technologies. Earlier, I posted a video of a Tucker Carlson interview with this guy from the What If Files, I think it is, or something like that. But anyway,
He's got a goldfish. It's kind of interesting. I forget the hecklefish.
right. And he was talking about all of the different people over time that have invented things that were considered disruptive technology, all the way from cars that run on water to, machines that pull energy right out of the ether or the universe or whatever you want to call it. Evidently, all of these things have already been invented and they've been deemed, technologically disruptive. And if you have a car that gets better than 20% efficiency, they're going to ban it. They don't want it because they have a monopoly on this. So what do you think is going to happen when we move over into the AI everything, electronic everything? Well, there's going to be laws put into place where you can't write certain code, where you can't create certain devices that go around their programming. We've always talked about, a prison planet and things like that. Well, they're installing the bars, but the thing is that we as people, we don't even have to use most of that stuff. We can kind of just turn it off. The problem is it's not going to go away just because you ignore it, and eventually it's going to intrude into your life. So we're going to have to come up with some system, a counterbalance. Not that there ever has been one, but eventually there needs to be some kind of singularity where individual freedom is equal to, I guess, governance. And that's never really happened before. And I don't think it's even here in the freest country in the world.
Yeah, and again, let's talk about metals for just a second. So all this, what we're talking about, requires superconductor chips, nonstop manufacturing, memory, everything that's being constricted right now. Metals as well, copper and silver. So I got one for you. Copper production could get hit as well as out of the Middle East. 90% of sulfur imported into Africa is from the Middle East and passes through the Straits of Hormuz. Traders are already struggling to source sulfuric acid, and this is a process used for copper oxide operations. The oxide copper is the dominant ore source of copper produced across Africa, pretty much. Incredibly, say, detrimental to the environment as well. That's where they get those leach fields. They get those like slurry dams that break and cover villages up, this kind of stuff. They only have 3 weeks of this copper, and at that point, the sulfuric acid, if it does in the sulfuric products, if they cannot get to Africa after 3 weeks, all of Africa's copper production stops. They don't talk about any backstops. Does anybody have any real extra? Do they keep an extra warehouse full of it in case of a rainy day? I don't know. This one just says if the disruption lasts longer than 3 weeks, copper oxide operations will have to close as they've run out of the acid. So see, everything that this system is going to be built upon requires these inputs. It requires constant electricity, constant water, and constant supply of metals. And the metals, the gold, silver, well, mainly silver, and also copper. If we're going to get into a point where copper is not going to be produced by the largest continent on the planet, then that's already going to start rolling back some of these things that have been in our mind planted already, that we're growing the seeds by thinking about it. Silver production is going to be affected as well. Like everything's going to be affected during this shutdown. And then here's another one. This is off William Middlecoop. He's a mining guru. This guy, got to check out this guy's name is Middlecoop. Hey, shout out if you're listening. I do watch your stuff quite a bit. And the Qualitum of Qatar supplies 9% of global aluminum. That is totally shut down at the moment as well. Also, the smelters are going to take 6 to 12 months to fully restart. So 9% of global aluminum is completely off supply, and it will take it 6 months to a year to start it back and get it back on supply. So just a distant early warning, if you're looking at aluminum futures, not financial advice, I'd say, if 9% of the global total is going to be offline for 6 months, I'm wondering what's going to happen to the price of aluminum. Do you think? Little things like this. You can do this all day long. They're giving you really good glimpses of what's about to go off here. So I'll give you one more here, Ransom. Let me see what I got here for you. apparently, yeah, okay, and here we go. China buys 90% of Iranian's oil. China was buying nearly 70% of Venezuela's oil. Neither were being paid in dollars. And now China has stopped all exports of gold or of gasoline, diesel, kerosene, any types of oil products, lubricants, everything is gone. They're not exporting even one drop. So this is what's going to continue. Let's
Kind of
see.
good luck for Southeast Asia there, huh? For all of those
Yeah,
countries that
right.
depend on China.
Well, they do to an extent because I was looking to see how much oil Taiwan or how many finished products Taiwan imported from China, and it's almost zero. So, places like Taiwan might be less affected than some other nations that get a lot of exports or imports for them from China in terms of fuels and lubricants and oils, this sort of thing.
Where's all those greenies at? I mean, think about this. What do you think
Where are they?
those greenies are going to figure out that all of that oil and gasoline is how they get those $7 apples in New York City? Imagine till it's $12 and $15 for a piece of fruit because it took a lot of extra expensive petroleum to get it there, plus tariffs, plus disrupted trade routes and things like that. We were joking about that and talking about that a long time ago about the distribution disruptions that we were having with normal business and trade in the world. Once it goes into a global conflict, we'll say, because they're not going to call it a world war because we're not even at war with Iran right now, despite saying we're going to be there till September. But you don't see them out there stopping the cars, talking about, hey, we need that gasoline so we can have cheap food and heating. And I'm sure you saw that Russia is saying they're going to cut Europe completely off petroleum, heating oil, and all of that. So people are about to get a little antsy and irritated about the way things are going. And then on top of that, you got the jobs market, which I was predicting. And this is a good window to the future. This is the blocks, the guy that was running Twitter before in his new company there says we're making blocks smaller today. Here's my note to the company. Don't worry, they're going to give them a universal basic income for a couple of years, though, after they lay them off, because the AI that they created is making money for them. It says, today we're making the hardest decisions ever in history. Our company is reducing our organization by nearly half, from 10,000 people down to under 6,000. That means 4,000 of you are being asked to leave or entering into consultation, meaning you don't have a job, you're just at home and they might call you if they need you. I'll be straight about what's happening. And then you get down in here. Don't worry, they're going to be giving them, 6 months of health care, 5,000 to put towards whatever you need in your transition, and then 20 weeks plus 1 week per year of tenure. So basically, that's their nice severance check. A lot of these companies aren't even going to offer that. They're just going to cut, and then they're not going to hire anymore because these data centers literally are human competition to employment, water, and food and electricity. We now have a real non-human competitor for everything. Imagine.
Yeah, and it's going to continue because that thing is not going to get smaller unless these very critical things it needs to grow are cut off. And Iran seems to be cutting them off, which is like, again, it comes into I know we're getting late in the hours here for the woo factor, but if you're looking at this thing in a logical sense where this behemoth of AI is just like rolling over humanity, it is taking every resource that we as humans need. But it is also vulnerable because it needs all the resources that are coming out that humans need, that humans produce, like the copper and the silver and the pipes that bring the water to it. And here's Iran stopping all of that in its tracks to stop at least African copper production, to stop the oil itself, the energy from coming out, which is going to disrupt economies, which is then going to disrupt the manufacture of all the things that the AI data centers need to a point. If they're profitable enough, they can have their own, supply chains within that. But if it relies on a larger industry, such as, the whole high tech, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, semiconductor industries, if those were to go offline or be taken over, something hinders that, then everything pushes back half a decade or more. And these things that were forecast to be by 2030 get just off the shelf back 5 to 10 years, and maybe that's the time that gives humanity to figure this all out. Because the only thing that can stop it is something of this large proportion that literally stops the supply chains of the world, and it stops the growth and the expansion of what this AI needs to grow itself. And it's such a bizarre thought to think about that, you know?
Right.
Because we were talking forever, like, how is this thing going to stop? Who's going to stop this AI? How is this AI going to get stopped? And here we are. It's getting hindered because of all of this conflict over there. Will history look back and say Iran was the one who stopped the AI from devouring humanity?
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
right. That's right. Right. It is like that. And this
devour
is
us.
as bizarre as it sounds, you
And
know?
then think about that. What place do, the poor common person have in this new world? I think this article kind of sums it up. Young blood, an elixir that prevents age related diseases. Study reveals blood factors obtained from young beings, not humans, beings, can improve late life health in animals and put an end to age related diseases. And I think we're the animals they're talking about, and the beings right now are young people that are selling it. We don't want to get too woo woo about where that comes from, but in the future, you can grow it in labs created. The AI can 3D print all of this stuff and mass produce it with cloning technology. So the people that are in control of those, this AI world that doesn't really have the blue collar worker in it or the peasant, well, we do have a reason to exist. We can feed the system, literally.
Wow, you're just building it up there, Ransom.
Anyway,
Yeah, all of you having great hopes for your children. They're nothing going to be blood donors. Like, what the hell?
it's
It's
not
almost like some bizarre movie where they're stuck on a wall and they're just continually sucked of their blood of enough just to keep them alive, but they continuously are a harvestable resource. Because I've gone into the points before of, is this planet a farm? Is this earth a farm? And we are being farmed here. And the farming techniques are what you know as nations. The technique of it, it's a democracy, it's a constitutional republic, it's communist, it's socialist. These are farming techniques as it would be organic farming, high intensity chemical agriculture farming, no-till farming, like whatever types of techniques you could use for agriculture. It's the same thing. Like, our governmental systems are in a different fashion farming the way human behavior is, human emotion is. If something were ethereal that was going to be feeding off of that, then the farming techniques would be different to supply different sustenance for different ethereal beings. And I've thought about this, and now I'm back into this whole thing. What if Iran really is the one that stops AI?
yeah.
Yeah.
um you, you know I,
No, I haven't been drinking or smoking anything tonight. Like, like those are just the thoughts that are like in reality around us that make more sense than everything we're being told.
right. Speaking of that, on the last note here, I was going to say something that has nothing to do with this article here, but I'm a longevity doctor. This is why I'll never give up alcohol, and it goes into drinking a couple of drinks of actual real uh, alcohol, like wine or something that you moonshined at your house. Probably 2 drinks of that a day, not the high fructose corn syrup, beer, and other products you find at the convenience store, but like homemade, real uh, alcohol that's made in the right way could add years to your life. And the unrelated thing I was thinking of is when you were talking about the farming. For some reason, this idea popped in my head that I was watching this, major big old robot thing go over the crops in China, zapping everything with lasers, killing all the weeds. And we've talked about that before. But I was sitting there thinking, how long until those weed species mutate to where they can handle large amounts of light, or to start growing in places that they didn't normally grow? And then will we have an epidemic of unedible plants taking over everything that have been genetically modified and tested and tested with outside stimuli to try to get rid of them? Like those weeds that are resistant to Monsanto already.
The Frankenweeds. Let that be thy sustenance for some of you over there.
We're just
But anyways,
kidding. We're just kidding.
As
None of
the
that
world
bad stuff is gonna happen. Rainbows are gonna happen. Everything's gonna work out glorious. No doom, no gloom.
No doom, no gloom. Just look at it as an opportunity. And when I say that, it's an opportunity for a reset in humanity as well. Like coming out of the Kali Yuga, as we talked about last week, the vibrational frequency is raising every day. Like this old power system just really can't hold state anymore. This is our last grasp at trying to hold it together. You can look at it in different ways. I'm looking at it as a possibility for whatever is happening out there to break us free of this old, and I hate to use the word matrix, but this construct that we were in that doesn't fit anymore vibrationally. You know, if you're tuning a radio station, we're tuning into the next station where that old system, well, we're moving out of that. So you can look at it in different ways. And then, you know, the things that are being disrupted right now, there's financial opportunity for a lot of people out there if you can see that coming off, because taking 9% or 20% or something offline for a year out of an industrial system that's been built and relying upon that, price is just going to do something different. So I do appreciate you watching. Hope you got something out of our talk. David Dubine signing off here with Ransom Godwin. Pass the peace and love across through, because that is more powerful than all of this destruction that we're seeing. Please support our sponsors, and those links are in the description box below. Every purchase you make helps keep this podcast and live radio show on air, bringing information just like this every single Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight, streaming off of Rumble, X, YouTube, and Vigilante TV. Where else are we at? I would have to see for tonight. But anyway, I just want to say thank you, and